Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar, Vehicles or Experience, what will we be buying in the near future. My name is Olli Krebs. I'm the General Manager for Central EMEA here at Onfido, and I'm lucky enough to be moderating today's discussion. We will jumping into the discussion very shortly, but first, just a note to say, please do drop any comment, any question, the Q&A to the right of your screen, and we'll try to get as many answered and discussed as possible. So without any further discussions from my side here, I would love to introduce you to our panelists, which we are talking through today. So let's start with Sarah. It's my pleasure to introduce her. She is the Sales Director for DACH at Transport Security. Sarah, why don't you introduce yourself to us, please?
Sure. So thank you very much for having me. I'm very pleased to be here. I'm an economist by education, I have to say. So I really like to tackle large, complex problems and take them apart in consumable bits and pieces. I've been working in IT for many, many years, and I've had the pleasure and honor to work with the automotive industry in particular, doing very, very large global projects there, which were all centered around securing digital identities of users, devices, microservices, APIs, things, and building trust to enable digital interaction of users. And so I'm very pleased to be here and contribute a little bit of tech knowledge to the discussion today.
Great, thanks for that, Sarah. And next we have Eva, Senior Director of Strategy at FAIR. Eva, would you just tell us a little bit about you as well, please?
Yes, and maybe also about FAIR for those who don't know, right? So I joined FAIR in 2017, early 2017. And before joining FAIR, I served as a partner at a global strategy consulting firm and worked in this capacity with the C-suites of OEMs in Europe, Japan, and the US. And maybe just a few words about FAIR. We are a Santa Monica-based tech company pioneering the car-as-a-service subscription model in the mobility space. So we created an app that provides consumers a fully digital experience and gives them also the freedom and the flexibility to return their car at any time. So quite a disruptive innovation in that space. So very happy to be here. Thank you for hosting, Ollie.
Thanks for that. And finally, Adrian, who is the Chief Digital Information Officer at Volvo Financial Services. Adrian, just a few words from your side, please, as well.
Sure, Ollie. Happy to be here and take part of this webinar as well. I'm actually in an exciting world, financial services, but in the automotive sector. So it gives us the ability to get better connected to the customers, and it's not about passenger cars. In my case, Volvo Financial Services is a company of Volvo Group, so we focus on commercial vehicles, and we won't just finance like traditionally our business is all about those vehicles. We are into digital products. I'm responsible for digital transformation at Volvo Financial Services, and that includes as well digital products and services, digital solutions for our customers. And we've been through a digital journey for more than 5 years now. I'm with the company for 12 years. I was in different other industry sectors before, so happy to have the ability of leveraging from one industry to another, and I'm happy to explore these discussions today in regards with vehicles versus experiences for the customer.
Wonderful. Dankeschön to the three of you. So with that taken care of, and now we're all keen to jump into the questions and discussions. So my first question will be actually, there have been a lot of shifts in consumer choices as a result of COVID. What's the current state in the transportation industry? Eva, if you want to start with that one.
Yeah, thank you, Ollie. So I think there are basically two major trends that were introduced by COVID. One is that infamous infection risk that drove consumers' choices, and secondly, the economic uncertainty that that evolved from it. So first of all, the infection risk made people basically fearing any type of public transport. So there was sort of a revival of the single occupancy mode of transport, no more Uber, no more buses, things of that nature. So you would think that's a good trend for the automotive industry, right? So more people going back into cars. But on the other hand, of course, that kind of risk and that trend was superseded by economic uncertainty. And it also drove together with like working from home patterns, the whole approach to mobility demand patterns. So while in the pre-COVID era already, we saw that like 60 to 84-month loans to get a car, or even the 36-month lease periods were becoming less and less of a trend because of the long commitment that people had to do financially and economically. Through COVID, it became sort of a nuisance and was potentially no more viable to many consumers. So they were looking for new models out there in the market. So subscription models came to mind, but also that huge demand for like online transactions. We all know how shopping at Amazon works, or even grocery shopping, went online, and why not have a completely digital experience in the car buying process? So those touchless experiences through more online shopping were reverberating, for instance, in the US with huge demand for Carvana, which is one of the online dealers over there, but also in traditional dealerships, we saw an increased demand for, let's say, deliveries, right? So at a certain point, even CarMax, one of the largest independent retailers in the US, was about 15% doing online deliveries to people directly. So, lots of trends that probably were accelerated through the COVID crisis.
Great. And from the other two, Adrian, Sarah, anything to add from your side on this one?
Yeah, I think that we entered this year with different plans to execute, and I don't think that anyone was expecting to get into pandemic crisis, and the impact to the transportation industry was massive, right? We've seen, especially with the lockdowns in spring, that the entire logistic chain the supply chain was completely blocked. We saw a shock on the markets. The customers as well were unable to conduct the business, and our focus was to basically help the customers, and that's always key for us, especially in financial services, staying close to the customers, being focused on the customer and helping them to get a job done, right? So, and it started, of course, with payment deferrals, but while we're slowing on some of the strategic journeys that we had initially planned, we started to accelerate others. And I think Eva was talking about the online presence, being closer to the customer and actually filling in some gaps for them, but being with them. I think a big lesson learned for us and for everyone during this crisis is that you basically forget about the competition. You get more into partnership, right? Helping each other, making sure that we navigate through this pandemic crisis together and we get stronger together. It was also an opportunity for us to accelerate on some of the plans that we have initially foreseen in the years to come. And here I'm talking more about the orchestration, looking at the end-to-end usage-based services. So basically taking more away from the customer in terms of efforts which are trending to move away and focus and have them focus on their core business. And this is, part of our journey of exploring the new business models in terms of helping the customers to get things, including vehicles, as a service to get a job done.
Great, thank you. Good. Sarah, anything from your side to add on this one?
I guess not much. Maybe just a positive comment or a positive finish for the question here. So I think what we do see is that actually the automotives are much faster now in building up a digital ecosystem around the car, right? So that has been around, and that strategic trend has been around for some years. But actually, I think the pandemic is helping to get through this transition at a faster speed.
Great, thanks. Which gives a great segue to the next question, of course, is in the end of the day, what do we think to long-term effects of the pandemic are going to be? Anything prolonging into the future? I know, Adrian, we don't have this special magic ball in front of us right now, even though we would wish for it. But what is your opinion on this one, Adrian?
Well, we don't have the crystal ball, do we? And I think that that's also fine as well. And a big lesson learned was that we cannot really lock down the economy. And even though we are now going through a second wave, we don't know how long it will last, the pandemic crisis, the vaccines will come. But I think we learn how to navigate through this crisis too. And we do that with the customers as well. And the experiences that we see, right? And as I said before, one of the acceleration paths forward is to look into connecting the dots, looking at the end-to-end, and having the partnerships and the ecosystem functioning well, where we look at key objectives such as how we can make this a better world, right? So how transportation basically can improve everyone's life. We look into degrees of CO2, key objectives that were for 2025 to 2050. I think the e-mobility, the connectivity, then the autonomous, for example, vehicles will come faster into play than it was foreseen before. Also, the connection with the customers, understanding better the customer needs through every touch point is an opportunity that was, explored in a way as everyone was getting more vulnerable due to the pandemic crisis.
Great, thanks, Adrian. Sarah or Eva, anything from your side on this one?
Yeah, if I may just add, I think Adrian pointed out a few things, even before this crisis, the automotive industry was undergoing a huge transformation with the trends that you mentioned with autonomous and electrification and so on and so forth. But and it seemed like there was never enough money and never enough investment there to compensate and make sure that all of those trends were, put into projects accordingly. And then kind of the crisis hit, and people had to, or the automotive industry had to actually refocus even further. And we saw that especially in the retail business. So for years and years, in automotive retail, what counted, especially in the passenger car industry, of course, was this kind of mausoleum mandate where you had automotive manufacturers demand from their retailers that they create these huge palaces, and they looked great because image was everything, and the brand had to be presented accordingly, and it went down to what is the tile size in your showroom, etc. But we saw this massive shift now to pouring investments really into digital retailing, into making online channels more accessible, more available, training dealerships, really listening to consumers all along. While for years and years it has been that customers were very dissatisfied with the requirement that they had to go to the dealership, that they had to negotiate, and it's all these kind of very old school and traditional ways of getting a car, anxiety creating as such. And so I think there is really that trend that accelerates the possibility for consumers to really get cars online, get more services, self-select services without having to be chaperoned with, the sales guy and so on and so forth, but really choosing a lot more on their own. And I think in the end, it will also create a lot more customer satisfaction around the car. And with that, shift towards a more online journey, we'll see also the transformation continue and accelerate in the retail business, where the dealer doesn't have to be only the showroom and whatnot. Physical co-location of service and sales doesn't have to be. All of those things of that nature. We're going to see more and more over the next years, and it's going to stay here, I guess.
Yeah, thanks, Eva. I think this is sorry, Sarah.
No, it's a good. Yeah, maybe just to add to what Eva was describing for the retail and space and the purchasing habits. I think we already see a shift also going forward after you've made your purchase, right? So when you look at digital interactions from users, when you look at the younger generations which buy electrified vehicles, there's a gigantic shift in terms of continuous digital interactions with OEMs, and that has actually increased during COVID, right? So what everyone aims for is to have continuous touch points with consumers, but also between consumers, dealers, and the OEMs. And you can see this happening already, and that will excel also further.
Great. So Sarah, would you say, especially now in the future, are we still buying vehicles, or will we buy experiences, or are we already going on this road? What is your expectation on this one?
I guess when you ask me today, I would say that there is a. I guess when we look at this today, we do see that the shift is happening, and probably it will not take much longer until we are buying experience, but we are also buying into an ecosystem, right? So there's an ecosystem of services which doesn't necessarily need to come from one particular manufacturer. Even though I might have a tendency, I might like a particular brand, and I will buy services from that particular brand, but I will buy third-party services as well from the consumer side of things, right? So I basically, I buy a platform, and I buy into an ecosystem of services.
Okay, great.
Yeah, if I may add to that, I think that's so. Sarah is totally on point. What we see is even third-party services being hardwired into dashboards and infotainment systems. We see, for instance, when you sorry to mention a name, but like when you get a Sixt car in the US, you will soon have access to an app that allows you to go into any parking structure. And pay that via app, and it's already in the dashboard in the car, so you will have access to that. It'll also give you sort of access to the activities that are going on in that city. It will display what's on. You can buy tickets online. Everything will be digitally purchased and paid for. So it's really getting a lot more experience for the customer than just the bare bones, the hard piece of the vehicle, and we see also manufacturers gearing up their experience in the showrooms. So you see, virtual showrooms, augmented reality entering showrooms, and It's certainly going to be a great experience, especially in luxury or the premium segments. But as we've seen across the board with, any kind of service that's being offered in the automotive industry, it starts in the premium location and the premium and luxury segments, and then it's kind of trickling down to the lower ends of the vehicle spectrum.
Yeah, great. Talking about premium and luxury, of course, this is now I have to ask Adrian with one of my favorite brands, of course, right? Adrian, you're representing a manufacturer here who pioneered already in the flexible way of using a car or the model of leasing and so on. What's your opinion here on this one?
Yeah, and it's true, and I appreciate the customer loyalty when it comes to the brands, and Ollie, thank you for mentioning that too. That's absolutely true, and it will continue to be. But it comes back to basically products versus services. And I think that at the end, especially in the commercial world, right? So for commercial vehicles, it comes back to everyone's business that they have their core to conduct. And for sure, it's very different than for consumer products, for passenger cars, where yes, you have third parties that are buying, for example, 1,000 cars or say, but for consumers, it's always, one vehicle that they would like to buy. When it comes to the commercial world, right, first of all, the product, so the vehicle is 10 times more expensive than the average car product. And that means, more money that are dealt with. Usually you want to know what you're buying, you go to the dealer and you'd like to configure or you like to experience the new product or so. But the pandemic crisis actually told us that that is not possible, right, during this time. So that even the crisis will be over after a while, the pandemic crisis. I think that the online presence were getting different other channels open for the commercial business will continue to exponentially grow. That means that you basically realize that your job that needs to be done, right, it is focusing on a particular part of the ecosystem, and it will require partnership because it's very fragmented. It will require partnership with other parties to make that happen. So services will be, in essence, right, extremely important for the future. And there are services and services to zero. It comes to usage base. You basically don't want to manage fleets anymore, right, because your core business is totally different, right? So, for example, in waste management, if I take an industry vertical, right, you have companies that are collecting the bins. There are others which are basically recycling the waste, and the whole ecosystem is very large. Now, creating services for every customer, right, is not enough because you need to connect the dots end to end, and this is where you basically come into orchestration, right, subscription of different services. We talk about connectivity, and probably we'll talk about hopefully the technologies as well. Data plays an important role. So there are a lot of things that are happening at the same time, right? So the advancement of emerging technologies coupled with desire of the customers to basically shift on services, plus the orchestration of having a smooth, end-to-end orchestration, it is essential for the new businesses. At the same time, it matters, of course, because your vehicle cannot be, like falling apart, right, while you're doing your core business. So it's important to have continuous innovation on that matter. But I think the most important thing is about services and services to zero in the digital world.
Okay. Thanks, Adrian. So, which also would be for me a question coming from a vendor, of course, or manufacturer. This 5 years COVID pushed us forward into the future, if not even more. How did this, let's say, juggle around your general plans of what you normally would have done in 5 years? I think Is that something where especially Volvo is struggling with? And of course, I'm quite sure Volvo is never struggling, right? It's always a good base platform. Nevertheless, is there something where many things had to be rethinked, or is it business as usual, beside the COVID stuff, of course, which is on this side as well?
Well, handling the situation during the pandemic crisis was number one priority, especially when it comes to the customers, and helping the customers, right, continue to do their business is key for us, right? So it goes to a win-win situation. We know that after that time period, right? So I'm sure, and this is where it comes the brand experience into play. The customers will help us to also accelerate on new business models, which actually are for them. But if we take the autonomous vehicles, right, and the electrification as an example, we all know that we are not yet there, not from an OEM standpoint, because we have the products ready, right, but the infrastructure is not there. The public infrastructure is not there, and it takes time. However, right, we were taking the opportunity to accelerate in some of the areas where it does not require, actually, we are looking into, change of regulations, and of course, safety comes first. There are a lot of new technologies that come into play in terms of not just, vehicle-to-vehicle connectivity and talking with all of this smart vehicle world, but as well in terms of safety on the roads, right? Where you have the traditional vehicles and you have the autonomous vehicles on the same infrastructure, it's quite not doable. However, if we take the constructions area, right? So mining as an example, we're able to basically create the ecosystems for the customers where the vehicles, right, are fully autonomous and do the job. And that includes from digging into the rocks and the mines, carrying those from one place to another. So there is no exposure, right, to the public infrastructure, and we're able to not just pilot, but truly work with the customers of creating that ecosystems and getting those services into play. So it's there. We initially plan to have that in 2 or 3 years from now, because you always want to be ready with everything and you want to be perfect. And we realized that actually we were there, and the customer's acceptance, right, as well, was, the appetite is there now rather than, let's try it in the future.
Great, thank you. Eva, from you are being, let's say, more on the buying side, of course, in this kind of stuff, any feedback from your side, any views or opinions on what we're just discussing?
Yeah, I think to Adrian's point, where the commercial industry has been really at the forefront of innovation is what he was describing with regards to making sure that the consumer is focusing on his business and is focusing on getting the job done, while somebody else is taking care of financing the asset, getting the services, getting insurances, everything around the car, right? Because you just need the vehicle or the truck to do the job, and you don't have to care about anything else. And I think that is something that is coming more and more to also the consumer space, where we see an increased demand for those subscription models. And the good thing about subscription models is not only that you no longer own the car, which is not in itself really necessary, because if you want status, you're also getting by just having it parked in front of your house. It doesn't matter whether it belongs to the bank or to you actually. And secondly, it comes with all sorts of things that you don't really want to hassle about with being a consumer. So it comes with an insurance. It comes with maybe a maintenance product. It comes with a basic warranty. It comes with maybe 24/7 roadside assistance. And the only thing that you have to do is just to fill the gas tank, right? And that leaves you just with a lot of focus on the rest of your life, and you don't have to worry about making payments every month, because it is a flexible model as well. So you can, return your car, or in Adrian's place, if your capacity is going downwards, you can return the truck and you're done, right? And you don't have to worry about future payments and long-term contracts and things of that nature. So I think that is truly kind of the TCO concept taken into the consumer world, and it serves so many benefits, as we're especially seeing with young people, right? Young people, millennials, Gen Z, they're afraid to talk to anyone, let alone to the sales manager on the retail side. So what they want is an online transaction. So, but what do you need to have an online transaction, right? You have to sort out all your vendors as a manufacturer. So you have to have somebody who's providing you with ID verification, right? Somebody who is doing a fraud stack or having a fraud stack, somebody who is implementing or integrating for you the F&I services, somebody who's doing or is providing payment ability online, who's doing e-contracting online. All of those things that have to be combined, and we see that a lot of that is now coming to the forefront, even with such things as crypto, where you have to do, safe e-contracting and vaulting, where you want to, of course, also have assets that can be structured again, so for structured financing later on. So it's really an emerging trend that the consumer demand basically has created on the industry side, and that is so exciting.
Oh, that sounds great. And talking about, because you both already touched a little bit when it comes thinking outside of the vehicle, right? Does the manifest has to change itself as well? What kinds of ecosystem do we need to develop beside, let's say, tied to the vehicles nowadays? And any opinions on this one? Maybe you, Sarah?
So in regards to, in general, right, any service that you build and anything that you attach to the vehicle, whether it's from the OEM, whether it's from its third-party services that are part of the ecosystem, I think the one major difference from building cars and building digital services is that you have to be very agile, you have to be very quick, and you have to be able to change and to adapt to user behavior, right? So that's also what I see in working with OEMs, is that there's a tremendous mind shift, which still, is underway happening, but we are not there yet. So when you build digital services, you have to be very, very flexible, and you have to be, you must build them in a way that you can react to changes in user behavior and user demands. And that is something that is very new to many of the OEMs that I work with, because of course we talk about, building cars, which ultimately means caring for the lives of people. But when it comes to provide digital services, there needs to be lots of room for innovation and creativity. And maybe just one final statement to Adrian's point earlier, saying that the technology is there, but the consumer is not. I would actually disagree strongly with that statement. I don't think technology is there in many ways. So I think technology is now getting there, and you see that consumers adapt to it, but specifically around electrified technologies, around autonomous driving. Of course, we are not there, but also in regards to digital interactions, there's lots of room for companies like Eva's here, right, which are actually innovating at a different level of agility and at a different speed, which is, I think, what the ecosystem needs in the future.
Thanks for that.
But I think the technology is there because we have the products ready, right? The point is the public infrastructure ready, where can the products be on the public road yet? And the answer is no. But it's not because the technology or the products aren't there. And we talk about an ecosystem. It's not just that the vehicle has to be ready, right? So it requires more than just the vehicle. But that's my point, that there are playgrounds where you can basically, more than just experiment, you can have the services, and that's the beauty of the commercial world, right? And I think that also in regards with pricing and maybe the continuous innovation you are talking about, as we are a captive finance company of Volvo Group, right, it's very difficult for us to compete with banks, right, when it comes to interest rates, right? So especially in Europe, and we all know that, right? So ECB basically is, having negative rates. The banks, get a benefit of that. That's not applicable to us. So we need to be more creative. We need to be more innovative. And this is where we come with unique value propositions to the customers, which I believe, the traditional way, if we take, the financing of a vehicle, you basically know what is the residual value. You create your, where you have your installments. You can bundle different products. You have insurance and many other things. But think about when smart vehicles come into play. And we have those, right? Those vehicles basically collect information. You know exactly what's on the road, where is it, how you can adjust, the traffic, and you can analyze this. And at the end of the day, you go back, as the customer will pay less, right? And this is where the service comes into play, because you address the inefficiencies of the ecosystem, right? Of the end-to-end. And this is where you look into, of course, making better products, making a better world. I think it's still profitable, it's good for everyone, and is rolling, right? So there is some skepticism, of course, in terms of, do I need to get it now? Where do I get a better, actually, cost efficiency if I run the fleet management on my own? Well, you realize that others can do it, better, and you can focus on your job to be done, and this is really rolling, right? So I'm looking forward. Of course, it's still quite of a journey until a public infrastructure comes into play. Electromobility also plays nicely. Sure, there is a lot of focus on batteries, but batteries are also not sustainable, and we know that, especially for the commercial vehicles. But the fuel cells will make the difference. The fuel cells will make the difference, because obviously we don't have to, burn petrol, to create energy to load batteries to put them on the cars, right? So what's the, the point of doing that? But I think the technologies are quickly changing and adapting, and I think the fuel cell technology will come as well into play in the years to come. So as the whole ecosystem is changing, I believe that many things will come into play over the next coming years, and we're ready for it.
That sounds good. This is where I miss the physical panels when things like this start and you can see how the mouse is going. But we're getting there. I'm quite sure we will meet again on this one. Coming into our, let's say, final round of a question, I would love to ask each of you two questions, actually. One question would be, what long-term vision do you think industry should be preparing for? That's number one. And number two, do you think we as communities, so when you think about the governments and so on, are we ready for this already, or is there a longer way to go? And I'm not talking about the crazy people running around in our countries having interesting ideas. I'm talking about in general, because I think the industry made a big step forward already due to COVID and a few other things. However, do you think the governments and also the communities are ready for this as well? So this will be the two questions. I will love to start with you, Eva. If you can just give your 2 cents for the both questions, that would be awesome.
Sure, I hope I remember the second one when I start answering the first one.
I will remind you for sure.
So I think a couple of major trends. One is technology. And Adrian is already expressing some of those thoughts. There's a lot more technology getting into those vehicles. And of course, they come at a certain price, right? So let me just give you two facts. One, in 1990, the price of a vehicle equated to about 32% of an average income, annual income of a person. In the year 2018, those 32% had risen to 60%. And that's based on an average new car price of $36,000. So you see in the future, when we build all that technology into the vehicle, how hard it's going to be with stagnating income to pay for those cars. So a couple of implications out of that. I think one is the future manufacturers of vehicles, especially the ones that I'm talking to on the EV side, whether it's Fisker or Rivian or Canoo and so on, who want to step into the footsteps of Tesla. They are no longer discussing selling their vehicles, right? So they are going to be fleet operators. The question is whether they are going to do it themselves or they're having an independent financier doing so, maybe sort of an independent captive that is doing that service for them, because they no longer think that these vehicles are going to be outrightly owned. So subscription service is something that's there to come. So people will get access to cars, not necessarily having their own vehicle in front of their driveway, but rather getting the car, when they want it, because they probably can no longer afford to have it. So that's probably a very long-term vision there. But I think it's also exciting because you have you see a trend that has sort of started with the millennial and Gen Z generation that care a lot less about status of a brand, the car itself. It might be kind of a downturner for somebody like Porsche or other luxuries of automotive manufacturers, but the brand is probably getting somewhat less important in the future. And because these vehicles will still have a certain attractiveness, they have to come through different kind of functions, whether it's inside of the vehicle, whether you're getting sort of entertainment play or other things that people have to, or that manufacturers have to differentiate themselves. But cars are going to look a lot more alike than you see them look at today. So that's my first question. What was the second one?
The second one, if you think we are ready as a community or within our countries or governments for this.
The government thing, right? I mean, the funny thing is that, today with COVID, you see government subventions pouring into the automotive sector to accelerate the sale of electric vehicles. And what that turned out to be was that now I think one public charging station is being shared by 18 vehicles. So there's a lot more to do than just building out the infrastructure to accommodate those sensors in the vehicles that Adrian is talking about, but definitely also everything about charging stations, getting the infrastructure ready out there for those new technologies. I think that's going to become a huge thing. And then, but one thing, and I've been involved in electric vehicles for a couple of years now. One thing that is also very true is when you look at major cities where electric vehicles are probably going to be the future trend before they go into rural areas, you have about 50%, at least in European cities, you have about 50% of people renting their homes. So they don't own a house where they can just put up a charging infrastructure or their wall box or something like that. They have to deal with the landlord, and how are these people going to manage to charge their cars is still, I think, an open question out there. And not everybody can use just street charging or charging at the next supermarket or wherever these charging stations are going to be built up. But that's going to be interesting.
For sure. Yeah, thanks. Sarah, maybe your 2 cents on these 2 questions?
So,
shall I repeat?
Yeah, I'll be quick. So again, so the first question was, if I recall correct, so where's the market heading, and is the environment or the regulatory body ready for it? So in regards to the first question, I mean, many trends are evident today, like electrified vehicles, which is probably, as Adrian mentioned earlier, just an interim solution, from a tech perspective, probably will move on to make them technologically a lot better from where they are today to maybe fuel cell and maybe other alternatives, right? So we'll have autonomous vehicles, we'll have connected vehicles. We'll have, an ecosystem of services which leverages the data that they produce to provide personalized user experiences and sell those, right? So in regards to the regulatory bodies, I don't think, the regulations that we have in place are ready for this, no. But that is normal, right? In every case, when you disrupt an industry or when an industry reinvents itself, the inventions have to be made first, and then the regulatory bodies will adjust, it will adapt. And so that's a normal trend. You need to see innovations first, and you need to see them happening. And they, once they will be accepted and adopted, then the regulatory bodies will follow. And usually they do quite soon, right? But you need innovation first.
Great. Thanks. Adrian, from your side?
I think, and I like the KPIs that Eva shared in terms of the affordability as well. And it's true that the emerging technologies come with a price tag, right? But at the same time, look at the iPhone. Some times ago, being a new phone, which is 5 times more expensive than the premium phone on the market back then, right? But still, that continues to be on a premium price, and consumers still buy it. Why? Because it's a phone, but it's a smartphone, so it's quite also different from the old phones. So the same comes to smart vehicles, right? So every vehicle, especially in our world, we have a truck that is equipped with about 10,000 sensors, right? So all the telematics basically collects the data. Now, I think those smart vehicles are making a nice transition from where, the topic that we are discussing today, vehicle or experience or vehicle or services. So it will accelerate more the driving to services, because the affordability, as you would compare in traditional world, a product, a traditional vehicle with a smart vehicle, right? You can't compare, right? So there is a different price tag as well related to it, but the services would help. Why? Because as I'm saying, where I said before as well, the smart vehicles are addressing as well a lot, or enabling a lot of effectiveness in regards with the transportation inefficiencies when it comes, for example, to cost, waste, and so on. So it will enable new business models. It will enable the ecosystem to come, together, because those vehicles that will be on the road will gather experiences, right? So we'll have, it's like you are having the eyes and the ears on the road, and you know what's going on, and you can basically monetize on that. So you could leverage on this basically to reduce the cost for, the customer when it comes, for example, in a particular, industry, why, the customer have to pay the same residual value, for example, when it comes to a vehicle, right, at the end of a lease or of a finance cycle. We basically can adapt that based on the usage of that vehicle. At the same time, that vehicle can produce something else and can connect to other industries. But it's very important as well that things are moving on all fronts. And we are not there where I think the OEM also should get together. A good example is like we have created a joint venture with our main competitor for fuel cells, because we believe that working together on that, we can accelerate the fuel cell technology. And that is truly the big game changer in the electromobility. So connectivity and autonomous vehicles will be there by starting in some areas where maybe private or public infrastructure is not there, but the governments are looking into making also, a better green world, right? So making a greener world, you actually is leveraging on those vehicles and helping and starting the investments on the public infrastructure. And there are always, little other, innovations where creativity, when it comes to the full package of charging stations, we're relying on actually making every day with a major city a better world, right? So, would you like to stay in traffic because of the trucks that are collecting the bins, every day in the morning, because they cannot do it during the night because they make noise, right? So you see, things can change, right, with the ecosystem that is changing, but it will also take time. So I agree to that extent to Sarah, but I think it will come, and it started, and maybe that pandemic crisis was, decided is really sad, right, with all the casualties that are happening around the world, is also coming with things where the mindset is changing, and these ecosystems are strengthening every day, and hopefully there will be more accelerations in the months and the years to come.
Great, thanks for that. This is closing our official round here where we sit on the panel. We have quite a lot of questions from the audience, which means we didn't bore them to death. That's a good sign, I think, personally. So I would love to go through a few ones of these questions. By the way, ladies and gentlemen out there, if you want, we will definitely answer these questions offline, and we'll get in touch with you to give you these answers. If you like, please let us know. Just starting with one question for you, Sarah, and I will read it here. Let me just give me 1 second here. So how do you evaluate data protection topics when looking at mobility ecosystems, especially in Europe?
I think actually data protection and data sensitivity can be interpreted or must be interpreted, of course, according to the law. But there are technical ways to do this, right? So when I look at standard software components, they all acknowledge GDPR. So it's not it's not impossible. It's actually the norm, right? So you've got tons of components which will make sure that any personal digital interaction that you do is GDPR compliant. At the same time, you can still leverage some of the data that you are collecting. So it's not per se forbidden, right? So taking a positive twist to this, I think the time is ready for it by now, because when you look at the security products and when you look at the capabilities that we have to automate all this, the technology is there to do it. And this actually allows you to then, to secure identities, to secure not just human data, right? You also need to protect vehicles. You need to protect vehicle-to-vehicle communication. I think that's actually when I look at the technical capabilities. So in regards to GDPR and protecting, individual users, I think technology is there, right? There's lots of components out there, but when I look at vehicle-to-vehicle communication, protecting that, in real time, assessing context in real time, how risky is this particular transaction? Should I talk to this vehicle, right? Am I allowed to talk to this service? That's, from a technology perspective, the next hurdle for us to solve. So I think with the technologies that are there already, it actually enables the OEMs to take a positive look and see, given that my protection is in place, how can I develop personalized services based on that?
Great, thank you for that. I think we have one last question we can answer here, which is for Adrian this time. How can automotive compete with existing ecosystems such as those owned by Apple and Google? If experience become more dominant, especially digital, does that equate to a loss of brand capital for OEMs? That's a good question.
I think that's a great question. That's a great question. I don't have the crystal ball, like I said before, but I tell you what I think. Obviously, the ecosystem owned by Apple and Google, right, in their verticals, is related on data, right? So the ecosystem that comes out of the smart vehicle world is also based on data. Now, the difference is that the sensors that are gathering the data is coming from the vehicle, which is owned by the OEM or the customer, and it depends on the services that are coming to play. However, there is a distinction between what Apple or Google or Amazon, for example, own nowadays, and they don't own that part, right? So I think from that perspective, the OEMs are in a better position than Apple and Google. Of course, that's, again, related to data. I would say it's more Amazon and Google rather than Apple, but it could be the same when it comes to financing or lending in general. It has come to Apple's too for payments. I think the OEM have the opportunity of leading in those ecosystems, and of course joining the forces equally will be a different ballgame. And if Google or Amazon will stay aside and will wait for this to happen, I don't think so. But I believe that we have to leverage on this competitive advantage that we have in regards with data, and of course we have to be compliant as well. Sarah mentioned, but I think we have the opportunity of leading within these ecosystems with the customers and potentially partnering with Google and Amazon when time will come.
Wonderful. Thanks for the question. Answer, Adrian. That's great. So, Sarah, Eva, and Adrian, thanks for joining us and joining me today here on this panel. Even though it was online, I think it was a very interesting round. I'm looking forward to do this again. I think there's much more to discuss between the four of us, and maybe next time I get some speaking time as well. That would be awesome, but they always try to keep me away from this. So having that's all we've got time for today. Thank you very much for joining us, and I hope to see you next time. For the ladies and gentlemen out there, please let us know if you have more questions. We are more than happy to answer them offline as well. And beside that, me, a German from Hamburg, I will finish this one in time, 2 minutes early, which is great. I wish you all a wonderful afternoon wherever you are. Stay safe, and looking forward to see you next time. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Ollie. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Adrian. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.